Yes, Sats, we're back. Thank we
That's kind of
are
scary.
sliding into home base here. Um, Thank you everyone who joins us now or later for watching the stream. The stream is about our Kickstarter. You can see it in the. Oh, I've got to put it in the description. Jeez, this is what happens. So Scotty's going to do the rest of the introduction.
Me? Well, Gareth has been a busy boy, so yeah, we're here. We've been having fun, just like head bashing and throwing out ideas, trying to get ideas for adventure in about an hour, right? So last time we had AJ, we had a lot of people join in on that one. So we had a lot of ideas going on that one, but yeah, so what we're doing here tonight is we're promoting our Kickstarter, but we also want to show you like how easy it is to really kind of head bash with somebody, idea bash, and get ideas. I really like doing this. I really like, especially with like Gareth, we're very like minded in our ideas about adventures, and so it's nice to find somebody like that and where you can throw those ideas out and then they come back at you and then maybe you throw another idea out and finally you get some great ideas. And last time or the other times we've had people in the chat like throwing out ideas too, which is fun. We've tried to incorporate those into it and we've also gotten some great ideas from that. So we really appreciate you guys, doing that and watching and helping out as we try to make an adventure in about an hour. That's kind of our goal. But yeah, so we were going to make an adventure today, and we have no idea. Like the other times, we've been like, oh, okay, this will be the theme or the genre or whatever of the adventure, and this time we don't have any idea. We don't have any genre picked out, so we're just gonna like start from total scratch. This is just like total.
Literally, Scotty just messaged me about 7 minutes ago. Say, are we doing this thing? I'm like, what thing? So,
Yeah, so
before
my
we
other.
start, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's backed our Kickstarter so far. We're at 55% and we have 10 days to go. So, I know there are a lot of people who are following the Kickstarter because we can see the numbers when you follow it. So, we know you're there. You just got to press the button.
Please.
Do the button thing. Right.
Like button.
Like buttons. Alrighty.
Support button.
So, first we have to well, let's just sort of talk a little bit about the last two that we've done. So the first one
Mm-hmm.
was sci-fi, and the second one was the Western horror. Now the first one was quite tight. We both agree on that. So the
Oh,
story
totally,
was
yes.
well defined and all that sort of thing. The second one, we kind of derailed ourselves.
Mhm.
And I mean, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the ideas and all that sort of thing, but we just didn't have this sort of central thread. So it
Right,
made great
right.
for a setting guide, but it needed that sort of thread to actually make it a proper session module thing. So we're going to try and get that back into focus, but we first got to think of a genre. What kind of genre are we going to do?
Hmm. Yeah, it's that looking at that blank page. When there's just totally empty. There's nothing to work off of, and this is where you got to start. So let's do something interesting. A modern day. Let's do a modern day,
Modern
but
day.
we'll have
Okay.
some twist. We'll have some twist with it. Either they're monster hunters or they have extra, interesting abilities, or
So like a superhero thing, or
it could be like maybe the government's hunting them. They're like mutants, or
well, why don't we take the fantastical nature totally out of it and do like a police procedural?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so we're doing a modern day police procedural. So there's lots to draw on for this.
Oh, tons, tons.
So we need this sort of inciting event, which Law and Order would start with a body.
Yes, yes, they would.
So do we? What kind of are we going to do? The standard trope would be a murder mystery. Um,
Yeah.
so we're going to have to quest giverize it and change it to something not as standard.
A fun thing to do could be it might be a little too cluish, but we could um you could do something, especially if it's a one-off, where you everybody gets some background that they hate a particular person that they all hate or that's all screwed them over, and yeah, and maybe the person doesn't know that they did it, but they all have like a grudge against this particular person.
But as a murder mystery or as something else.
I guess it would be a murder mystery.
Okay. Um, but how do we twist that? How do we go instead? Because murder mystery is like the first thing people think. Oh, police procedural is going to be a murder mystery. It's like the
True,
number
that's true, that's
first thing
true,
that
that's
comes out of
true.
your mouth. So
Yeah,
what's the
yeah, yeah,
second? Like, no, that's a silly, crazy idea. That's the
yeah.
one we're going to pursue.
Yeah, how do we twist that? Or, they could be police. The players could be police, and then
Yeah. So
there's
the players
something.
are like detectives and police,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
lawyers and whatever. So it's a police
yeah, yeah.
procedural. Yeah.
Right, right. Like, yeah, literally a police procedural. Yeah. How could we twist that so we get something really interesting? Um, maybe maybe the body. Uh, everybody, all the players knew the person, and the person was maybe an asshole and left a lot of
A dirty
ruin.
cop.
A dirty cop, yes, yeah, a dirty cop, and maybe when they're about to, they took him to the morgue and they're about to, do tests and everything on the body like disappears.
So the so it's like a body theft.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm liking this. So there's two
So that could be an
crimes.
interesting
There's two
twist.
crimes.
Yeah.
There's the murder, which is standard, and then there's the theft
Hmm.
of the body for some reason. So we've got to
Right.
intertwine those two narratives then. So the theft of the body, because obviously there are reasons why the body would have been stolen, um, and we can concoct those reasons later on. But it's just, the inciting incident is normally the thing starts with you going to the place where they find the body, but here you're going to the morgue where they tell you that the body is gone.
Right, 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 right.
So that's pretty cool. I think that's a good beginning because it kind of that throws the whole sort of standard police procedural narrative on its head. So it's like you
Right, right.
already know that this crooked cop has been murdered, and you're going to the morgue to speak to the medical examiner about cause of death and so on and so forth. And they get there, and
Hmm.
the medical
Hmm.
examiner says, "I haven't been able to start because the body is missing."
Right.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah.
So we're assuming in this one shot that obviously the people are being given characters. Um, so you would have to then come up with 4 or 5 characters so you can hand them out. So one person would be like the district attorney, one person would be the lead detective, the other person would be the secondary detective, another person would just be a standard police officer or the police chief, um, and you can just add police officers as you need, so they assist with
Right.
the investigation.
Right.
So those are the characters I think you would throw in as the players.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to use our how to run a successful role-playing game campaign, and obviously we've got the first section is the hook. So why on earth would they want to investigate this and not hand it off to some other detectives, like in
Right. Right.
internal affairs or whatever? There's got to be some reason. So we've got to think
Right.
of, again. We always talk about the three core things that you need. Plot hook formula are also available on our website. The three core things that you need moral imperative, duty, and consequence. So duty is like that's self-evident. They're police. It's their duty to do it. So that's kind of handled, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can't go,
Right.
nah,
Right.
we're not going to do our jobs.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So that one's handled. But the moral imperative, obviously, we've got this dirty cop. So what was he doing that um, will compel the players morally? What can they learn?
Maybe each one of the characters knows something different dirty that the character did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just call him Dirty Jones for now. Just to make it
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
So Dirty
Yeah.
Jones, corrupt cop. So each character. So what are the bad things that? So dirty cops can be involved in multiple bad things. So you can have
Mm-hmm.
drug dealing and murder and prostitution and whatever. You know, those are the kind of standard things. But what is Quest Givers going to do to? What are we? What kind of messed up thing are we going to do?
Right. Right. Um, it could just be that was just involved in everything. Like one of the characters is his former partner and saw him plant evidence. Maybe one of the other characters saw him deal drugs. Um, Maybe another character knows that he was very close to a murder. Like maybe a district attorney knew that he just got out of like a murder by the skin of his teeth. Like it was just some technicality or whatever, but it's almost certain he's almost certain this person murdered somebody. You know what I'm saying? So it could all it could be that it could be that.
Yeah, the
And maybe it's like, and maybe it wasn't just he was dirty. He was like, the thing could be he was with some organization, like some
he
criminal
was about to
organization.
spill the beans on someone else. I think is probably because that
Oh
that
yeah,
that could be someone stole the body for that reason, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But it's not really the reason. That's the reason they'll believe.
Okay, right, right. So that's what seems like the reason,
Yeah,
but it's something else.
yeah. Um,
Maybe, maybe it could be that it seems like that's what it is, but
I think it's probably because
maybe
that.
near the end he knew he was going to bite it,
Yeah,
and he kind of wanted to repent his ways
yeah.
or something, and maybe somebody helped him as far as like stealing the body. It wasn't a criminal; it was someone who was trying to help him, make amends for what he's done or something. But it had to be a reason. Like, why wouldn't they want him? Why wouldn't they want any of that evidence to come out about how he died?
Well, that's again. We're creating an assumption in their minds that this is why it would be done, but it's not
Right.
necessarily the reason. So we can
True.
twist what the actual reason is later, but
Hmm.
what they perceive the reason to be should be different. And I
Right.
like the fact
Exactly.
that he's just come back from some, you know, maybe he's just come back from being in Mexico or something, and he's possibly transporting drugs as a drug mule. Although why he would do it, I don't know. Or something to that effect. He's, no, I think that's because that doesn't really fit in with what a police officer would do. Because you'd be
Right,
more
that's true.
you'd be more inclined to manipulating other people into doing it because of your position.
Right, right. Than
Um,
actually taking the risk yourself, right?
Correct. So I think leaving it as a mystery as to why the body's been stolen, because that's like a what on earth. I think
Maybe they never find out.
yeah, you could do that. Perfectly
Maybe they never
plausible and
find
valid.
out. But they find out like other stuff, but they don't ever find out why the body.
Okay, so built into the character backgrounds is a sort of moral imperative is you need to find out information about this guy to solve these various different background histories they have with the character. So that's their moral the moral choice that they make. The consequence obviously is that everything's going to be solved and they're going to get a result.
Right.
Which obviously, as police officers, is compelling.
And maybe, right, and maybe they're as they're shaking people down, they're like, this person didn't do it and this person didn't do it. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's all the evidence is pointing to whatever connections this guy had. Like they never get, they can't get a straight answer or they can't get any proof that this person did it. So it's just kind of like.
I just had one of my brainstorm brain farts. One of the characters is in cahoots with the dead guy.
Oh, I love that kind of stuff when I run one shots. I love doing that kind of stuff.
So they're trying to foil the investigation in some way. But they're just as in the dark. They don't know why the body's been stolen, so they're just as surprised. But they're trying to find the thing, the briefcase or whatever,
Oh, right. The MacGuffin. They're trying to find the MacGuffin.
Joe had this briefcase, and everyone's after the briefcase.
Right.
The cops don't know what's in the briefcase, but the guy within the cahoots knows what's in the briefcase. So there's like, $1 million in cash or something. So he knows that it's also a corrupt cop, and he wants to get his hands on that briefcase because there's $1 million in cash. He doesn't want to end up in the evidence locker.
Right.
He wants it on his boat in where's a boating place? Is Cabo a boating place? Because cops always seem to have boats.
Wants to go to Cancun.
Okay, so that's workable then. That works. So then obviously the choice is relatively simple because they choose to do it based on the fact that it's their duty to do so. So the medical examiner is kind of telling them the backstory. So we've immediately got a herald character who can do exposition, who can explain things. And explain what's happened so far because she's just detailing the evidence that she'd been given, but we're minus a body, so I can't tell you actual cause of death, but it looked like it was gunshot,
Or maybe there was no evidence of a wound on the body. Well, no, would they take it to the coroner then?
Oh, well, they always take it as a murder. They take it to the medical examiner always.
Right, that's true. But yeah, I guess if there was a murder, there would have to be some evidence, But it'd be interesting if the coroner, at first glance, like the coroner's talking to him, and they had to do the autopsy because they don't know what caused them to die.
Yeah.
So it wasn't
at this
an
point,
obvious.
At this point, it's not a murder, but we think that it is.
Yeah.
And
then the coroner can't tell him why they died.
Who killed him. That's a classic. So the murderer
Yeah.
is actually among them.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay. So now we're getting somewhere.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
all right. So that means we've got the choice done. So the mentor. So we need them to sort of move along to what's it, the point. So they basically, I think they should then go to the crime scene and they meet like this elderly neighbor or something like that, who is a retired cop. Um, what do you think?
Yeah, that could be interesting. Um, yeah, yeah, it'd be nice to have like yeah, retired cop. So is the cop uh does the cop know all his shenanigans or how dirty he was?
Well, maybe he suspects, but so this being the mentor character, this character has to give the character something to go on later in the story, or an
Right, right,
object, or something to that effect.
right.
Um, Look, it doesn't actually need to be a character. We could actually make it an object within the crime scene. The object acts as a mentor,
Ooh,
so
that
we
might
could.
be a good idea. Yeah, I
So
like
it
that.
could be a book, like a diary or something, is actually the mentor character.
Yeah, I like that. Where they
So
find just more and more information about it. Yeah.
So they find like his ledger. He's got like a little black book ledger. So we take it to the crime scene. You know, there's still crime scene technicians there. A couple of people sort of mention interesting sections of the scene. So here you can do like the investigation part. They got to find the little black book's hidden under the bed or something like that. So they find this little black book and in it it's got this sort of encoded ledger. Um, so then they have to kind of figure out what this ledger means. And again, this is just revealing information, places, characters, etc., that they'll need to track down in order to find the murderer.
Right.
So the guy who's in the character who's in cahoots, his thing is he wants to get this ledger because he wants to find out where the briefcase, is, and the
Hmm.
other characters need this in order to figure out who murdered the guy. So the briefcase will probably have this dude's prints all over it. He probably got the briefcase and gave it to this guy,
Hmm.
and said, "Stuff the money in there, and I'll come and see you later this evening." And he came and he's like thought that the guy had the briefcase, so he murders him, looks for the briefcase, and oh shit, where's the briefcase? Can't find the briefcase, and now we've got a problem. Um, and his prints are all over it, so he or she, um,
Yeah.
and so they have to then like figure out, oh crap, how do I find this briefcase, because it's got my fingerprints on a briefcase with $1 million in cash, and it doesn't look good. So yeah, so then so the cool thing is you've got the investigations. You go to the crime scene, the guy's apartment or whatever, and you have the techs who can divulge information. You can eventually find. It may be good to pepper it with different objects, so it's not so that you find the little black book, and then you find other things that will help to push that forward.
Hmm. Hmm.
Excuse me. Um, and yeah, so you got a lot to go on then.
Right. Right.
But at this point, we have to introduce the clock. So it's got to be done by within 24 hours.
Oh, right. Right. Right.
So how do we do that?
Hmm. So yeah, I know. Like with if you don't find in certain crimes, if you don't find somebody within 24 to 48 hours or something, it's you're not gonna find it. kind of thing. I don't know if that would apply to this.
No, that's normally live people,
Yeah.
and it's also
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, not a corpse.
Yeah, if someone's missing, they're missing. It doesn't matter how long they've been missing for.
Right, exactly.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, well, yeah, maybe it's something to do with the money
Yeah.
or the briefcase. but the characters, most of the characters wouldn't necessarily know that.
I just
So that's
realized
not
the
good.
stream was unlisted, so I had to make it public.
Oh, that's funny. I was gonna say I didn't see it on there.
Yeah, it's like, well, why is there no one watching? That's probably why, you dumbass. So, yeah, so, sorry, what was your last comment?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so maybe my comment was that maybe they have to find the briefcase within a certain amount of time, but the problem with that is they got to know there's a briefcase.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. So there's got to be something that's something that everybody would know from the start that would be the clock. Maybe a clue they find at the scene. Or maybe maybe they find there's this phone at the scene, and there's a countdown timer on the phone. And they have to figure out what the countdown timer is.
That's
like, what's
cool.
it for?
That's
kind of
cool.
fun. Like, why do you have a countdown timer running on his phone?
And it's labeled Armageddon.
Right.
Because you can label your timers.
Yeah.
So that could be
right. Or even like a really cryptic, like, what? That somehow ties into the. It doesn't make any sense at first, but as they investigate, maybe it makes sense, or certain words and it makes sense. The weird statement. Like there's like one word is actually some place they come across, that
or
some
it could
clue
be
leads them
multiple
there.
things, like Big Apple. It's obviously New York, but it could also
Right.
be like a restaurant chain, and
Mhm.
like a tow truck business, or
Right.
it's not immediately apparent as to what it actually is.
Exactly.
Okay, so well, let's push on. We may just revisit the clock.
Yeah.
So the next thing is sort of the gateway. This is the point where it's the point of no return. It's like, this is the slippery slope of the rest of the story.
Right.
So obviously there'd be other people involved in this. So there'd be like his CIs, confidential informants, and he'd be in with drug dealers and pimps and so on and so forth. So this is kind of where they would begin to immerse themselves in that world. And what's good with this is there's so much that you can add into here in terms of character, places, because they've got to go around and investigate things, and you've got this journal that can then give you ideas of where to go and that sort of thing. And obviously there's a whole bunch of addresses. There's no names, just addresses. And one of the addresses on there is the home address of this other character, the character that's the bad guy.
Right.
So the one who's in cahoots.
Right. The player character who's in cahoots.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, Max DM Crafting, how are you, my friend? All the way from Italy. So, to recap where we're at, we're doing a live session prep for a police procedural, a modern day police procedural. Because something I've always wanted to do, and with these, we didn't discuss this before we started the stream. We're just going to go right out. So, what we decided was it was going to start in the morgue. The characters, there were going to be 4 or 5 characters. One of the characters is in cahoots with the crooked cop who's been murdered. And we decided he is the murderer or she is the murderer, is that right?
We haven't decided that yet.
Yeah, okay. So they may or may not actually be the murderer, so they're part of this collective. So the collective of characters that the players will play would be a detective, a district attorney, a beat cop, or a police captain, or a mix of those kinds of characters, or maybe a CI. You could have a CI in there. So they're all investigating this murder that's happened of this crooked cop. And one of them is the person who may or may not have murdered this person. Now, what happens is they arrive at the morgue, they meet the medical examiner. The medical examiner starts to describe what they know about the crime so far as a sort of like, just everyone's on the same page kind of exposition. But then she gets to the point where she says, but we have a big problem. The body is missing. So the body is obviously from the crime scene, has been brought to the morgue, and then the body has been stolen. So that's where it starts off. We talk about the hook is basically, they've got to investigate, they've got to find this body, and they've got to investigate the murder. So you've got these 2 sort of intertwined stories happening. So the hook is obviously, it's more heavily focused on duty because they are police. It's what they're supposed to do. But one of the characters, because they're a dirty cop that was in cahoots, it's more for them about consequence because they don't want the other ones finding out that they were involved with this murdered person and that they may have or may not have committed this murder. We haven't really got there yet. So then we move to the crime scene. So they go back to the crime scene and they meet the crime scene technicians, which they then go through the crime scene in more detail on themselves, and they find various objects, one of which is a little ledger that contains like addresses and amounts and things like that. And this just gives them clues as to where to go and where to look. So what they're looking for is A, the body, and B, the murderer. But what the crooked cop is looking for, they're looking for a briefcase that's got $1 million in cash in it that they know it does because they gave them gave the crooked cop the briefcase and it's got their fingerprints all over it, and they know that their fingerprints are all over it, and so they've got to find the briefcase to 1, get the cash, and 2, not be found out as also being part in cahoots with the crooked cop. So that's really where we find ourselves now, and we're now moving into sort of the gateway section of the story, where they become immersed in they sort of cross over into the underworld of this murdered person's life, which is, corrupt police, pimps, and drug dealers, and crooked CIs, and all that kind of cool stuff. So that's where we're at now. So there needs to be some sort of test. There's some simple test, and I think solving the first of the sort of entries to this, it's like almost like it's encoded, this diary. So you can actually give the players as a prop. You can give them a page from the diary with all kinds of stuff on it, which would be pretty cool because then they can cross things off the list. And one of the things on there is the address, the home address of the player that's in cahoots. So they've got to basically, like that's their ticking clock. They've got to get it before they get to that address. They've got to try and suss out. So the briefcase is going to be at one of these venues, and they've got to try and sort out. So maybe there's a CI who's protecting the case, or there's a pimp who he's the guy who is a middleman for some drug dealing cartel, and he's got the money that's owed to them, or they go direct to the cartel and the cartel's got the cash, just waiting for them to pick it up. So there's all these things you can do. You can sort of play your own way. You can move this briefcase around, which would be also very cool. It's like you go to the CI and you on the character notes, like Jon Snow has the briefcase, and then you go, it's like Jon Snow, he'll have the briefcase. So you go to Jon Snow, he says, no, but I gave it to Pete to keep it on ice, So then you're like, shit, now I've got to get to Pete, but everyone wants to go to this other place first. You go, maybe I should go and why don't we split up and I'll go and investigate this one. So you can add all these kind of elements into it, which makes it chaotic and fun.
Right. And you could even add more things that it's directly involved with the player characters. Like maybe the DA is the one that the cop actually blackmailed the money from,
and he wants to get the money back.
Right. And maybe the person who one of the other cops killed the guy because he was dirty, but didn't steal the body. The other person.
Yeah, we still, at the moment, with the body being stolen, we haven't clarified whether that's actually like a thing, or
but they weren't the one that stole the body. The one that murdered him wasn't the one that stole the body.
Yeah, no, that's why they're freaking out, because like, who stole the body? And then that can be a question they ask all the various, like, okay, so, but why did you steal the body? It's like, I didn't steal no damn body.
What you talking about?
I didn't steal anybody.
Who would steal a body? Who would think that?
Anybody?
I don't know anybody. Dead or alive, I don't know anybody.
So this part of the story is where the tests happen, which in a police procedure is great because there's lots of investigation and role playing. So this will be more a role playing heavy game.
But, totally, yeah.
Of course, if you want to throw in things like car chases and shootouts, you can, because some of these people are criminals and they think, oh, you're just here to break up my gang. And
right. Yeah, depending on your group. If they like some action, in the game, throw it in at certain points. Like we do with our quest givers thing, where we have like optional encounters that we have in our modules, where if they don't want to, if you want to break up the role playing a little bit, you can throw something in there. So yeah, you could do that. You could have just a shootout happens suddenly, or violence. So add a little bit of action in there. But then there's some people that just love the role play and aren't as interested. And you could do it either way, depending on your group. You could really make it a no violence kind of thing, until maybe the end, or someone catches somebody or whatever. But yeah. So depending on your group.
So all these things sort of naturally fall in place with this sort of second act. So the next part of it, because these sort of can happen concurrently, is preparation. So you're preparing for the major event. And that's, again, the gathering of evidence, crossing off the various different things. Now, the major event should be that they discover that this character is in cahoots. So
right.
There's multiple ways that this can go. Obviously, this could split the party, and they have to, the guy goes on the run, or they just arrest him straight away. But they're still taking him around because they need them for information.
Oh yeah.
So one of the characters is playing, this prisoner. So and then the other players have to try to extort or extract information from this player, which would make the game more interesting from that perspective.
Totally.
Because you've got like this whole thing is you've got an actual person you can, rather than just the GM, and the GM doesn't know what he's going to say, but they can consult via notes or SMS or something, And yeah, so then you can build on this whole thing, this major event where they then discover that this person's in cahoots, which is different from what you would expect the major event to be. You would expect it to be they find the murderer or they find the body. So now it's the second clock starts ticking, and that's the race against time too. Like they've established that this person is involved in some way, but they don't know if they're the murderer, because obviously you're not going to say, "Yeah, I killed him." But they need to find. So maybe this character then lets out as a way to kind of get themselves off the hook for a murder. They say, "Oh no, there's a briefcase full of money I've been looking for." So that then, this then becomes the hunt for that evidence. So the reward then, which is the next section, the reward is then that they, well, what would the reward be? So they've got one of their men.
Right.
So Maxium Crafting says, knowing your group is absolutely fundamental. You can follow them and also give them a shocking experience. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yeah.
The better you know your players, the more you can play them like a grand piano.
Exactly. When you know what buttons to push for your players, yeah, you can have some great stuff going on. And on the other hand, what they like, what they enjoy in a game, it doesn't have to be antagonistic. Yeah, what they enjoy, give them what they enjoy, But anyways, so yeah, so we could add, at this point, you could have more of the kind of the player secrets, playing off of each other.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mentioned that maybe the DA, he got the money from the DA, or maybe with another clock, it could be that the players find out there's actually a bomb in the case with the money, and if they don't get it at a certain point,
whoever was going to put the money in the case put the bomb in there as well. So there's like layers of fake money with real money on top with a bomb inside it.
Right.
So this adds like a whole new dimension to the whole thing. So what you can do at this point is you're moving into Act 3, which the first part of that is exit. So you've got to exit the situation. And the one thing you could do is do a chase scene. This is traditionally where you would put a chase scene in the story. And being a police procedural, of course, this is, you can have the corrupt cop in your midst break free, jump into a police car and motor off. So now you've got to get a car from a bystander or something. You're all bail into the car and you've got to chase this guy, and you've got to be on the radio, you're on your phone or whatever, phoning sort of the headquarters to get more people chasing this car. So you could actually do that. And then, so the one player is driving the getaway car, so he has to do a whole bunch of checks to try and stay ahead. So his goal is to get away, and the other ones, their goal is to actually catch them. So that would be pretty cool. And then you otherwise I lost my train of thought there.
And maybe too, maybe that's kind of a red herring. Maybe be a fun chase, and maybe it's a red herring because actually, the guy who got murdered took the briefcase to the evidence room and had it like cataloged in the evidence. So it's actually been the whole time in the evidence room.
That's a classic.
With the bomb in it, and then they find out, oh crap, we got to clear out the police station, or we got to convince, because the guard's not going to be like, oh, you can't have it, you don't have the paperwork. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So they got to, either, just get in the evidence room and get past the guard, or they
God
gotta and they
damn it,
gotta.
Bob, there's a damn bomb in there. Check, give me the
Right.
goddamn evidence.
See, after they chase this red herring down, and finally catch it, it's like they figure it out. It's like, oh crap, it's in the.
So there's a couple of calls for a recap in the chat. So we're doing a modern day police procedural. It starts in the morgue, and the characters are like a police officer, a detective, a district attorney, and maybe a CI or something like that. A crooked cop has been murdered, so they're coming to the medical examiner to discuss what the medical examiner has found so far. So the medical examiner begins to do her exposition as to what the evidence is so far, recapping the crime, so it's an easy way for you to just kind of get into what's happened. But then the reveal is that the body is missing. The body's been stolen. So one of the characters in the group, one of the players, is actually someone who was in cahoots with the crooked cop. So they know that there's a briefcase filled with $1 million in cash that they have to find, that the other players don't know about because they were in cahoots with this dead cop, right? So the other players have to investigate the murder and find out who stole the body. So that's that point. So now we talked about the hook. Obviously, it's heavily weighted towards duty because they're police officers. They've got to do this. Moral imperative, we actually said to have in the backgrounds of each of the characters, there's got to be some compelling reason how they're connected to this dead character, as to how they, their reasons or motivations to actually pursue this thing. And the consequences, obviously, they need to find this out. But except for the one player, the consequence is quite dire, because if they find the briefcase with the fingerprints all over it, they'll know that they're in cahoots. So their secondary goal that's separate from the primary people is to basically find this thing to cover the fact they're in cahoots. So then it shifts to the crime scene. So they go back to the crime scene. So they, in the beginning of the game, they wouldn't have been in the crime scene, but we're just narratively taking them back to the crime scene, where they meet crime scene technicians, and they go through more of the crime scene, and they find various different things. One of which is a little black book ledger that contains names and addresses and things like that. So the little black book acts as the mentor. It's giving clues to what's going to happen in the later in the story. They also find the guy's phone, which has a timer on it. The time is ticking down, and it has the label for the timer is something like Armageddon or Boom, because now that we've decided that this is a bomb in it. So they know that within sort of 12 hours or whatever, you can set the time however you wish. They know that something's going to happen because they've found it on the guy's phone. It's flipped out under the bed, and whatever, they've only just found it, and they didn't know about it before. So then from there, they then go into the underbelly of the city. They're looking at drug dealers and pimps and crooked CIs and all these kind of people to sort of find out information, all the while crossing off things in the ledger. Now, one of the things in the ledger is the address of the home address of the one of the player characters, the one that's in cahoots. So they've got their own little clock. They've got to try and keep people away from his own address. So that'll get to interesting role playing if they get there and he's got like his pictures and stuff are on the wall, and he's got to take them all down or whatever. So it's interesting things you can do there. So that then leads to the so in there you can have anything that you do want, like shootouts and all that kind of stuff. That all that's sort of in this thing. So when they're meeting drug dealers or whatever, they might be the drug dealers may misconstrue it as a raid. So there's a shootout or there's a chase or something. You've got to run someone down. All these elements can be put in here. So then you're preparing for the major event. So the preparation of the major event is just crossing off each of these things in this ledger. And the major event is that they discover that one of their friends in the party is actually corrupt. So that's the major event, because you'd think it would be discovering the murder or discovering the body. Well, they may have discovered the murderer if this character actually killed it, but you can kind of decide whether that's true or not. So then the reward is they basically find the information about this bomb that's going to go off, because the briefcase they discover has been put into the evidence locker. That'll be revealed by a CI or something like that. It's like the crooked cop before he knew things were going to be shady. So the best place to hide evidence is in the evidence locker. So that's what he did. He just filed it under a different number. So they've now got to get to the police station. You can have the corrupt player break free and steals a car, and then you have a car chase, because he wants to get to the Evans locker so that he can get the $1 million, and they want to get to the Evans locker so they can stop this bomb. And you can play it out however you want to play it out. So then you have the next narrative point is death. So this is where they'd actually get to the evidence locker, and the bomb is basically about to explode. The phone timer has ticked down to like the final minutes, and it's all sort of scary and freaky and whatever. And then the next phase is life, when the bomb doesn't go off, or it does go off and it kills a lot of people, and the players manage to survive, or they manage to evacuate the building in time. So you can play it either way you want to play it. And then finally celebration. So we hadn't really covered sort of the death and life situation, but it kind of writes itself, I think. But the celebration, they find the body. It was basically just a mix-up.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, maybe it's the last clue.
Yeah.
Is a celebration, and they end up finding the body.
Bungwire says bomb disposal is a great chance to be a hero or a zero. Yeah. And seeing as it's like a one shot, if you kill characters at this point, that's perfectly fine, because it's like right at the end of the adventure. So,
and you could have like pretend like give a eulogy. You could have like the actual player, give a eulogy for their character or whatever.
They were such great guys.
At the ceremony, where they're putting the flag on the coffin. And
well, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's quite a nice little tight.
It is.
You could definitely have that. That could be quite a long session, because there's a lot of things you can throw in the sort of the area in the second act where you're sort of going around, and that's where you can, if your players like the combat and that sort of thing, then thank you.
Dinner's here.
You're on your own.
Hey, where's mine?
Where's mine? So so that lends itself very nicely to doing a range of different things with your group, depending on what your group likes. Perfect for role playing, so perfect for doing all kinds of weird and wonderful characters. I think people would have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, you could, like you said, I mean, you could do a lot. You could stretch this into several sessions, actually, because there's a lot of role playing opportunities. But one trick that I like to do is, if you don't have the time for that, and the players are just kind of getting it, they're doing too much role playing, just have stuff happen. Like, what I'm saying, just have stuff happen in the game that they have to respond to, and they've got to cut stuff short. And sometimes you've got to do that, especially if you're trying to put it all in a one shot and they're just taking too long with certain parts of the investigation. Just have stuff happen that just draws them away, and it's a more juicy clue, maybe. That's that really works in games. I like to, and it also keeps the action going. You know, if the action starts to slow down, the pace starts to slow down too much, the player's not sure what to do, or they're just kind of fumbling. Just have something happen. Have something that draws them to the next, the next part.
Always, because it's event driven. What I would always
Hmm.
suggest is
Right, right.
have the next event kind of just happen. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah, that's what I do all the time. Yeah.
yeah, and that sort of helps to propel this because what there's this misconception that the whole world revolves around the players in RPGs. No, the players are responding to what's happening in the world. Um, so the world continues on. I mean, it's like you walk out into the street. Just because you're there doesn't mean traffic stops. Um, it just keeps
Right, right.
going. And think of a role playing game like a river. The player characters in the river, and people go, well, this is very much like railroading or whatever. Well, the world flows anyway, and they can make decisions as to where they're going in the stream that's moving forward. Um, you're just placing sort of rocks and rapids and waterfalls and everything that as events in this constant flow of information that's happening. Um, whereas a railroad is to me, a railroad is when the players have absolutely no choice whatsoever.
Exactly, exactly.
It ceases to be a railroad the moment the players are given more than one option. So if you think you're railroading, give them two options, because that choice alone, it diverts, and that diversion is where it ceases to be a railroad, and really becomes the quest giver's river.
Yeah, the North Road
River.
river. And I like to think about like what you said with the river analogy. Because the world goes on. If you have some scheme or whatever going on in the world, it's going to go on to its conclusion without the player characters. The player characters, when they interject into that, they can change the direction of things and how what was going to happen reacts to. It's still moving toward that conclusion or toward a conclusion, but the player characters can divert it and change it. So that's the difference between, thinking about it as a railroad, where an event's going to happen and is going to have a conclusion. It's the players are shifting and changing that, so it's not a railroad. They're actually making the thing that's happening have to react to what's going on to what they're doing, so they're actually having a direct effect on it. So it's not a railroad if you have a story. don't
Yeah.
don't fall in that thing that if it's not a sandbox, you're a railroad. That is not the
Well,
case.
remember this: when you're reading a book or you're watching a movie, the movie is about the central character. In this case, the central characters, right? But you, as the GM, have no choice as to what these central characters are doing. You only have a choice in terms of the narrative events that you place in front of these characters, and they work themselves through it. So it's very different from writing a book or a movie. If you were railroading, you'd say, okay, now your character does this, and your character does this, and now your character has to do this. That's railroading. Whereas this, it's like, well, what does your character do? You have like 500 choices. Um,
Literally, yes.
yeah. And that's an important distinction because a lot of people think, oh, the moment there's a story, you're railroading. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, that is not the case. That is don't fall into that trap where railroading. Yeah, it's not the same thing. It's
yeah,
not the same thing. When you take player agency away, that is railroading.
the moment
You know what I'm saying?
remove choice, then yeah. I mean, a train has
Yeah.
no choice; it can only go forward.
Right,
Characters
exactly.
can go backwards.
Yeah. And whatever the characters do, the story still moves forward,
Yeah.
right? It's just adjusting to the characters.
The body is still missing.
Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly. So.
Bungwise
Yeah.
is deep insight here. Listen up, y'all.
So don't fall into that trap because I would much rather play in a game that has a story than you're just thrown into the wilderness and you decide what you do. I mean, that's not I know people like that, but that is not particularly interesting to me. I've always found my games that have a story, the characters are the players are way more invested. They're hanging on every word, they're hanging on everything that's happening. They're hanging on every word. They want to find out what's happening. If you're just wandering around the wilderness killing a few things, you're not. It's not the same feeling. It's not the same
A,
part of something. You know what I'm
a
saying? It
sandbox
feels
is
more like a video game.
a sandbox is a survival game. That's all it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
You just
yeah.
have to
It's all it is.
survive.
Right, right,
You know, if a story happens, then it happens. But yeah, really, a
right,
sandbox is a survival game,
right,
which is
right.
not a role-playing game.
And you can make your own stories onto that, sure.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is a lot of times they're not going to be great stories, right?
No.
When my players come to the table, I want them to have a great story and a great time every time we get together because let's face it, we're adults. We have lots of things we need to do. If you're not getting something great out of spending hours sitting, pretending, then they're not going to stay. They're not going to keep coming back. So if you're just, sometimes this would be a good story because this has happened randomly, that was okay, this was really boring, okay, whatever. But if you have a story that's drawing the players in, and they're just hanging on it, wow, it's a huge difference. It's totally different from just random stuff. So yeah,
Uh,
don't let people tell you it's a railroad.
and I think that's part of the problem with a lot of the settings books that people put out, is you're just creating the survival environment. Um, that yes, you can obviously generate story threads yourself in that environment, but they're not really giving you the narrative threads to work with. They're just giving you a whole bunch of information that relates to one another. Here, survive this.
Yeah, yeah, with those kind of setting books, it's like, um, you can make up all that stuff yourself. You can easily, Gareth and I can sit here for an hour and make up a world easily. But the hard part is making a story within that world. That's the more challenging part because that's the more interesting part. If the players may never find out 90% of that information in that book, right? And still love the game
Yeah.
because it's about what the part they're interacting with now, not the lore of the 1,000 years of lore that we had in the book, or whatever. They don't care about that. I'm telling you, these players, they're not. There's very few players that are really going to care about that, um, and enrich their game experience. They're going to be enriched by what is happening now. How is it affecting my character? And as a game master, you can take that in, but really, how much of that are you using? So,
The
to me, I much prefer an adventure, actual adventures that maybe even utilize a setting or have their own setting, as opposed to, oh, here's a setting book. Now you have to make everything up. You have to make every adventure up yourself. Yeah.
I love most of my world building. There's a lot of depth in it, right? I know all the cities and where the swamps are and all that sort of thing. I very rarely actually have that in the game. It just sort of informs what I tell the players. So if the players don't go into the cathedral to find the altar to do the whatever, they'll never touch that part of the world, right? But that doesn't mean that part of the world doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that I've got to force them to go there so that I can tell them all about this cool cult that I've had that no one's discovered yet. But the thing is, you bring it in other ways, so that informs the culture of the world. It informs the players the characters that you meet, the NPCs. It informs all these aspects of the way that you present a narrative within this world. So they may never find out why the tavern keep is trying to double cross them. They may never find out that information. You, as the GM, with your world building, you'll know that there's some secret cult that blah 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 that has informed your decision to make the character do that. But it doesn't mean that the players needed to know that. It just makes the character more interesting because you've given the character depth. You've given the character, the NPC, a variety of motivations within the world. So not motivations towards the characters. The characters are merely interrupting their daily whatever they do. The characters are interrupters. That's what they do. And you as the GM are just a matter of placing problems in front of the players as narrative events to drive the whole thing forward. So Max DM Crafting says, need for being a part of something makes the players look like not just pawns on a chessboard, but like pieces of a puzzle. Everyone with a specific color, shape, and position in the bigger picture. Yes, and it extends beyond the players. The NPCs are all part of this fabric of this world, right? They don't. A lot of the times, I tend to feel that when I'm watching other people play role-playing games on streams and things, the characters are always separated from the world. The world is this thing that they, for some reason, has to revolve around the characters, and it doesn't. There are obviously exceptions, and from what I've watched of Critical Role, he's very good at keeping the world as this ongoing place that the characters are involved with, rather than it's happening to them specifically, the whole world. So he does that very well. But it's a difficult skill to learn, because the natural thing is to just make it, everything just revolves around the players. But when you start to think of it as the world is just this ongoing thing that just keeps going and going and going, regardless of what the players do, that kind of lifts your game, because now your world building is extremely important, because then you need to start to bring in these elements to actually help the players discover what's going on. Leads to investigations. They're going to find out about this cult that lives in the cathedral. They're going to find out about these things. And that immediately, the depth comes across. And that's what we try to do in our modules. We try to show a lot more depth, but in a subtle way. So it's not like, here is the entire history of the world. We just do it in little snippets in a book you find. It's like, there's a tiny bit of lore that kind of informs what's happening in the story. And the most important thing is that everything you say is about the story and not about the world, because things that aren't related to the story in any way, it's like if in this police procedural we then start talking about a hurricane in Norway, what's that got to do with it, But and the moment you start saying these things, and the player's like, well, this must be important because you're telling me about this hurricane in Norway, so let's investigate that. And then you start to derail your own adventure.
Yeah, that's a great point. How you can derail, your own adventure if you're not careful by just giving too many details, or just, if you say something, you keep droning on about something, the players are going to be like, think that's important, so be careful about that, about that in your games. Totally.
Because if you show them a thing, they're going to use and interact with that thing.
Yes. Yeah, if you mention, anything, the elaborate desk, or the large mirror, they're gonna, and you spend any time on it, they're gonna want to. Yeah.
I mean, we've both played, right? And so my first reaction is, why is the desk elaborate? Because you're in that mode of the world revolves around me, right? Everything here is for me.
Right.
That's
good
how
point.
the players think.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Well, there's people in the world, in the real world, who think that way, that the whole world is just there for them to exploit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
You can call them sociopaths. Anyway, if you'd like to join us in the video chat and add your own opinion to our ongoing saga of This Is Not Railroading, check out whereby.com/questgivers, and you can actually join us in the video chat.
Yes, yeah.
So this is all about promoting our Kickstarter, which there's a link in the description below and at the beginning of the chat session. We're at last check, we were at 55%, and thank you to everyone who has actually backed our Kickstarter. We know there's a lot of followers who haven't pulled the trigger yet. So, yeah. Spunkmeyer Sr. is in the house. He says politicians. Yes, politicians are very good at seeing the world revolving around them. There's one in particular that everyone knows. I'm not going to mention the name because everyone knows who they are. And the first thing that jumped into your head was Trump, but I'm talking about every single politician in the world.
Right, exactly.
Bangwaz, how are you?
Hey, man. Hey.
What's been happening in your neck of the woods?
Wait, let me close my audio so it catches up.
All right.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey.
how are you?
Fantastic. Just back from a little vacation with the family. We went to a bunkhouse in the wilderness of sorts. So we're back and fantastic. And I'm in crunch time because tonight is today Friday or Saturday? So
Friday.
Today's Friday. So a week Saturday is my next game where I'm running Thief.
Oh, nice.
With a semi, not even semi, it's an entire reskinning with comic book action heroes. I can't say who because it would give away too much.
That's fun.
But the talking dog is the dead giveaway. So yeah, thank you very much for that. I needed a murder mystery, and this was totally the one. I've got so much to talk about. You guys have been going on, and I've only been in a short period of time in your chat. I made a few little notes. First of all, I want to go back, if it's okay with you, because you're talking about your original modules. The first one. What can you say? I ran that, and there was this crazy lady called Zerga. And like you guys said, the narrate the story, not the world. And I was trying really desperately, and I narrated too much about the world. And I completely forgot what my players had done prior, and their method of solving the Zerga problem was a flamethrower. Which for some whatever reason, goblins had made it or something, and Zerga got a flamethrower right in the entire. She was sleeping, in fact. What a lucky break! Sleeping in her her wagon. So they never got to meet the warp ferret. I want to also Scotty, just so you know, they will. No, and they did. They did. I'll get to that. I'll get to that because the warp ferret solution was brilliant to me as well. Scotty, just so you know, crafting. I meant to mention this last time, but crafting, we're all about it. This was the mouth of the Sarklargan.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So it's so simple. A little piece of cardboard with a little piece of foam and some toothpicks for teeth. That's the mouth. And then I had these guys, which were pivotable tentacles.
Fantastic.
And as soon as the players realized that this thing grabbed an entire horse and was starting to feed it in the mouth, the fear level went through the roof. And to this day, actually, it's been one of the players' most terrifying moments. They had all this loot. They had this massive gold. They had everything to lose, and had to defeat this monster. And man, blew up. So yeah, gold. Thank you. Yeah. And just as an aside, the crafting aspects, because we all love the crafting. Simple clay, a little bit of wire, fed into a base that's just weighted a little bit to give it, enough to stay on the table. And like I said, cardboard, some foam, a little bit of paint, away you go. Your toothpicks, and you're good. Thank you so much, Scotty. Mint.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad you had fun, because that's what it's really all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're like blah blah railroading, blah blah this railroading. But it's like
on to my next point. I'm so glad your interviewer skills are on the point there, Scotty. Like in the last 6 months or so, I came across a theory called the quantum ogre, and the quantum ogre theory is maybe well known to people, maybe not, but it's all about whether or not if you can say you're using a quantum ogre, then you're railroading. If you can't say you're using a quantum ogre, you're okay. Oh, and I'll just, as an aside, sandboxing to me, that's mega dungeons. And if you're in a mega dungeons, you're in a whole other plane of existence, and go right ahead and do that. But in terms of just storyline and making a plot and making your characters work for you, and you're making your players have a good time, if you're a DM and you say, I've got a path, and I come to the branch where left side is going to be something and right side is going to be something, but in the end, it's actually this quantum ogre, which, as you can sort of imagine, goes back to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which says that if you look in something, you're trying to examine a quantum particle in something, you can't see it because you're measuring it. So if you're trying to make a path in your adventure where both ends lead to potentially the same thing, that to me is railroading. If you are trying to get your players into one end of an aspect, and that's the only way to do it because they've kind of derailed you, sometimes a little brush, a little push is going to hurt. But at the same time, you can't be, well, we're going to come to a branch in the road somewhere in the plot, and it doesn't matter what you guys choose. Devoiding your players of that choice, to me, removes the entire point of making it a game. You might as well just sit there and say, this is what you guys do. You did this, you did that, you did this. Instead of your players telling you, we do this and we do that. It's a huge difference to me, and it makes all the world. So that's my take on railroading.
There's something to be said for being able to, like, if you're good enough and your railroad is good enough, you can use the illusion of choice to make them feel like it was their decision the entire time. But that's very difficult.
It's really difficult. And in fact, that was one of the comments in the YouTube was about chess pieces. And I've always felt it's a fine line. Like, you love to have your characters and your players feel individualized. But it's a fine line. If you can make them feel like a pawn, and that they're subjugated to the choices that they've made, then that's a totally different story arc. But it's difficult. That's a I don't know, level 9.0, 9.1 DM.
Like a level 3.
What do you want to call that?
Frankie,
so how did it?
Frankie D. Crafter asks, you think there is a fair balance between both where you explain the lore of the world and what pertains to the story? I don't think you should ever explain the world at all, ever, except through the mouths of the NPCs and where it pertains to the story. Like, people don't stop you in the street and say, listen, 1,300 years ago there was a person who lived here who, created a cult. It's like, no one does that. You have to get into a conversation with the character, and then you realize, oh, the reason I live here is because my family came here 100 years ago, as part of this cult, but thankfully we're no longer part of that cult. Like, you're presenting lore without actually, like, just sitting the players down and going, this is what's happening in the world. If you are a DM who says this is what's happening in the world at the moment, that's not, like, the players can't see it, hear it, smell it, taste it. If it's not right in front of them, then there's a problem, because then you're just exposing, like, information which is, like, beyond the realm of the characters. The characters, unless they have a supernatural ability to know what everything else that's happening in the world, then...
Gareth, it's not even the players, it's the characters, it's the players themselves' ability to recall all those things that you're telling them. I've sat through games where blah blah lord is engaged with this blah blah lord, and the princess of this lord is blah 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 with this princess, and and you just right? So simplify it. If there's important details to which the characters themselves will interact, then let that fly. But otherwise, the world itself is the world, and if they want to choose to go to discover those things, let them. But otherwise, I could care less who's in power, or what emperor is involved, or what knights are roaming around the countryside doing whatever.
Well, I mean, in the North Road, there's a lot of stuff that's in the world that we don't really reveal. and will never be revealed, but it forms part of why certain characters react about other characters in the campaign. It informs that, but you'll never know. You will never, like, it's something, but it just makes the characters more interesting because we've thought about what is the reasons for them doing certain things, that it's not necessary. Like, why is this guy grumpy? It doesn't matter. He's grumpy. You know, the players don't need to know why, but you as the GM, if you understand why he's grumpy, that informs all the characters' reactions to what the players are asking them. You know, that one thing the players will never find out, but it's the thing that makes the character interesting. And that's how you kind of use the world to make the game better, to make the NPCs better. Sorry, Scotty, I cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say, you will find that if you if you try to ram history down the players' throats by just reading block text or whatever, they're going to go blank.
Snack table.
Like they are, you know, most players, there's a few odd chicken or whatever, but most players are just going to blank out when you start, because it doesn't have to do with them. It doesn't have to do with their character. So have them find out that stuff in the game. You know, have them find that's pertinent to what they're doing, and not, you know, all this history, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we should say that that's different than when you get to a little town, and there are 10 or 12 NPCs that you might interact with throughout the night. One of the super handy things that my DM's done for us is get a picture of them, put it on the wall. This is her name. Put the name right up there so that you've got this visual glance where you can just say, yeah, haha, excellent. I want to talk to her again. Oh, the blacksmith? That's his name. Right, I got it. But it's way different than the overarching history and backstory and all the jazz.
And I do that a lot with NPCs too. I like to have pictures of the NPCs,
Yeah.
so I'll set up a frame with something I grabbed off the internet for the character, and they can actually look at this while we're role playing, you know, the game. Or if I'm online, you know, running the game online, I'll put up the picture, give them access to a picture of somebody that I've picked for the NPC. So that's, you know, they can actually get because a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you can describe somebody, you know, for 15 minutes, or you can show them a picture and it's like, bam.
Yeah.
You know,
Our adventure that we played in camping this year, over a week of spending camping, we played a Fate game, and my GM had an entire deck, 2 decks of cards actually, of just exactly that, just character pictures and like implements and little things that you came across, and it was just very simplistic. He came out, oh, you've come across this. He would flip through his deck, pull it out. There's a picture to remind you that you've seen this or this person. So such a great little mechanic.
Oh,
yeah.
And there's so much art online these days.
Oh man, it's
you
easy
can't
peasy. Yeah.
any character you want to find.
Staples or someplace close by that'll print out something on cardstock in color. Yeah, you're off to the races.
Yeah. If you don't have a color printer, just go put stuff on a drive and have it printed or whatever. But it you know, it can be good. It can be good for your game, just to have that picture, you know, in mind of somebody.
But also what we do through our modules is we reuse monsters, which most of the time people are like, well, now find a different monster to use and a different monster to use.
I've got to have 15 different monsters.
Same monster in different ways.
Or they're going to get bored if they have the same monster, because it's about the stats for a lot of modules. It's not about the flavor of the monster, which is way more important, maybe way more interesting.
Any monster that makes you poop your pants is worth coming back.
Well,
so how did I have a question? How did Ahabat work out in this scenario? Did they run into her? Did you have them run into her?
Actually, no. I had to delineate her from the.
Oh, okay,
from the
gotcha.
scene. Yeah. So, however, the Warfare made a reappearance later on.
Oh, awesome.
And for whatever reason, maybe just my players are just too good. There's the subtle cue of one of the players having some sort of agonizing abdominal pain caused one of the other players to stab him in the gut.
Oh.
And so it's easy to resurrect, or you can always heal one of the player characters.
Right.
So the Warfare died inside, took enough damage, died inside the gut of the player that had been infested, and that was the end of it. But the player that got stabbed was infuriated, absolutely lost his mind. How do you know that was? And it became all meta about everything, and it was just one of those. We had to take a break, just get some more pizza. Like, oh man, it was nuts.
It sounds like a great moment, though.
It was one of those
Sounds like a great moment.
funniest moments. Yeah. Absolutely.
I had an interesting solution to the. My wife did an interesting solution for the warp ferret. She was in the bathhouse because her and another character were women, so she was in the bathhouse and she was a bard, and she said, "Oh, she was talking to the other player character about this mud facial that was just amazing, this magical mud facial." So of course Zerga's like, "What? What is this mud facial?" And so. I want give me the mud facial. So she's sprawled out, and the character's putting the mud on her face, and so my wife did a performance to hide that she was casting a spell, it's called Crown of Madness, and you can control the victim to like act violently against something else. So she actually had Zerga strangle the warp ferret. And like snap its neck, and so Zerga, let's say, was pissed off about this, but after this happened, they like boogied out. They got the hell, because Zerga still had the mud mask on. It was all coming off, but they had to run out of the bathhouse to escape. But I was like, that was genius. That was really that was really smart.
That's pretty cool. If I recall, the whole bathhouse sequence really messed up my players because there was only one female in the party.
Oh, gotcha.
And one questionable in the party. So a gnome, all right? Gnomes, they're always questionable, right? Who knows with gnomes? Anyways, I can't remember specifically the details, but I do know that that bathhouse sequence, man, it was a bit of a loop for everybody. So yeah.
Anyway, that was fun. Yeah. And I ended up having Zerga, like, because of that happened, she kind of held up in the bathhouse, and like the guards surrounded the place, and she stayed there for the night. She didn't even leave the bathhouse because there was like, oh, there's traitors, trying to kill me or whatever. So she just hunkered down in the bathhouse until the next morning when they had the tax collection scene. So
yeah, my players anticipated that a little bit too much, and so decided to leave town the night before. To intercept the tax collector, and then I'm like, oh, we're kind of rolling back in my chair a little bit. Okay, so right. She's on the road to the town, and well, they stopped for the night and had a little nap, and well, look at that, you walk upon their entire camp, and there's a couple of guards hanging out by the campfire, and then my players just went to work doing what they always do, which is destroy. So it's good fun, man. Anybody. I cannot say enough. Do your thing. Buy Quest Givers.
Hey, thanks, man.
Get on your Kickstarter. You guys are getting close to your goal. Come on, everybody, get up there.
Yeah, if everybody who's watching it would just say sign on, we'd be good.
Absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Well, thank you. I know we've had a blast. I've had a blast running it. So my players, and one of my players was like, after last session, because we did the Sarlakarn, and I had a very similar thing to what you were describing, where the thing rises up and it's just chaos and the tentacles and just crazy. I mean, this monster is just insane. So I had Alphabet, in the one I ran, and one of my players later after the game was like, did Alphabet was wanting to kill this thing because it ate her family. Did she bring it? Did she cause it to come to our camp and for me to kill it? And like, you just never know,
She's wily.
She's wily. Yeah. She's wily.
And she did live in my game, so that was awesome. She didn't get devoured.
She's one of my favorite characters.
Oh, I love her. I love her. I had so much fun. With her. Yeah.
Him and Scratch. Scratch is like, wow.
Yeah, it's definitely a win.
The talking dog.
I've had a
who
lot of
doesn't
fun with
talk.
Nira too.
So have you played through have you played through all the ones up to Thief, or you're just playing Thief?
No, I pick and choose.
Okay.
Cool, yeah, cool.
So we back and forth DM.
Yeah.
And we're doing a lot of one-offs. So the Thief actually is going to be a complete one-off.
Oh, it's a great one-off, yeah.
And it absolutely is a perfect choice. The my campaign, if you want to call it that, kind of ended after. Well, what's the one after North Road? The Loyalists.
Yeah.
No, the Loyalists and then North Road, right?
There's the Loyalists and then Messenger in the Woods.
Yeah.
Messenger in the Woods, yeah. So before Messenger in the Woods, I didn't do that one. So it ended at So and it was spectacular. In fact, they ended up being stuck in a tavern with an underground, and I kind of rewrote some of the stuff in the underground.
Cool.
They found the treasures they were looking for. Essentially, I just wrapped it all up because everyone seemed to be getting a little bit tired, and that's kind of one of those things you got to kind of judge about your group. When you're doing a campaign, especially when you're doing a campaign, it's important to get and we would always at the end of an adventure say, "Yeah, that was really good. We must be close to, summing this up." Or, I would like to see this go more. And we would have those frank discussions out of character and just, behind the scenes to gauge what people want. And if people want to just do one-off one night, well, we can throw in a one-off one night. If people want to continue with this campaign, we'll continue with it. But for our specific adventure, I could tell people were getting like, okay, so it was confusing and convoluted, because we had crossed so many arcs. We went through a little bit of so I started out with Rapa Nuthic, and if everyone knows who that's the mega dungeon from Frog Art Games that everyone wants to play but can never imagine playing. But at least if you can take some part out of it and say, I played Rapa Nuthic. We played the front 0.05%. So it was a very small part of it, but it got us going a little bit, and then we moved into some of your adventures, and then throughout that we, did a few little side quests and stuff. But the total of our quest and campaign maybe was about 7 sessions, I think, and that's just about enough. And we're only playing monthly. So if you play weekly, it's a little bit different story. But we're only playing monthly. We're all old men. We're all family guys. We all live outside different cities, so it's a lot to get us together. But if you gauge your players and you gauge the timing, then it worked out actually that our parties had a great, fantastic adventure, and it was fun. And all 80%. I don't want to give you guys full credit, but 80% of the adventures that we ran were some Scotty and Gareth. So thank you very much.
Well, we do try.
And I'm putting on Thief next week, so we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know. I wish that they've all declined the opportunity to do some sort of live streaming or video taping of this. They're all scary cats and going, someone might find out my credit card information. But whatever there. So we're not going to do that, but I'll give you guys a great summary of how the events went. And Friday you'll do another live stream, I'm sure. Next Friday.
Yeah,
as you guys have been.
The last one, I think.
I'm assuming that's on your schedule. Last one before the end of the
and then we'll go to one every month as opposed to one every week. Yeah.
Right. So whatever, we'll catch up. You know me.
Oh yeah.
I'll fill you in on the deets. I make great notes. I keep myself a little journal and stuff of what's going on. Some notes somewhere.
Awesome.
So one of the things we like to do with our modules is each module is a different style of playing, so that you actually give the players an opportunity to not Like, oh, we're doing this again. We're doing this again. That's why one's a murder mystery, one's a chase scene, one's a political one, one's more combat. So we move it around and change it up so that at least you're going to hit all the different things that people like to do through the campaign. And each story, obviously, we try to have the exploration and the interaction and the combat and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, and for anyone who doesn't know, the way that you guys have laid out the settings and the characters is a lot different than a regular module that I would see for 5e or something, where you don't list statistics. So you leave that open to the DM or the players. You don't. You give very extensive conversation details, which is great because that's one of the hardest things to come up with while you're on the spot. My players ask me all the time, "Well, I'm going to talk to this guy, and I say this, and what does he say back?" What you guys have done is amazing and listed. If you're talking to this character, here are the 10 or 12 points that he's going to give as details. And you might say he only gives D6 versions of this story, but he also has there's some variance there. And throughout meeting each character throughout the scenario or the module, you start to become involved in this whole really interlocking set of details that come from different characters that the players themselves have to start putting together and getting the pieces and saying, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I heard that from that other guy, but he said that too. Oh man, this must be the path we got to go." So I think it's a brilliant way to write a module. You guys I've said this before. You guys knocked it out of the park. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see more. Wow. Once again, what am I doing? What is this called? Drooling over the author's merge. You've taken my words away from me because you are so awesome.
We're just glad you're having fun. I mean, that's what the whole thing. That's what it's all about. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. No, we definitely do have fun playing. Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun first, the story second, and then the other stuff.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's a great. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Especially rules are like 5th or 6th down the road.
Rules are low. Yeah. The other end.
Yeah.
We also, for instance, with Thief, which you're looking at now, all the NPCs are horrible people in some way.
Yeah. So I'm so happy you said that because I can't. It's a giveaway because my players are going to watch this and now we know, and it'll be too easy for them.
Yeah,
so
you don't want them to see what.
You're absolutely right. There's some horrible characters in that, man. Holy moly! Oh.
Yeah, all these people suck.
Thank God they're Scratch.
Exactly. Yeah.
If only he could talk. What are you saying, boy? What are you saying?
Yeah, and we got dialogue for the dog.
and I mean the giveaway. The giveaway for everyone who's evil is that they hate Scratch.
Yeah.
Right.
Stupid dog. I practiced so many different versions of stupid dog voices. Yeah, stupid dog. Get away.
And that's what makes it memorable. Because remember that game where there was that dog?
Right.
Yeah.
For us, it's like, when we're writing these things, you want, as you're playing through them, you want that sort of touchstone of memory. You want oh yeah, that was when we were in that village with that talking dog. Or whether that's when we were in the forest with with that giant thing.
Yeah, or the Sarlacc broke through the earth and the camp was in chaos. It's everywhere. You want those moments. You want those moments.
If it's okay, I just was flipping through my notes for one of the adventures, and I realized that I had made a note that if you smoked the weed. I had a wild magic surge table, and I pulled this directly from D&D 4 or 3.5. Anyway, 3.5, I think. That's the wild magic surge table. And if you smoke the weed, you get to roll. It's basically D100.
Yeah.
And of course, I couldn't believe this. This blew my mind. So my magic user smokes the weed and he's okay, but now you have to roll D100, see what happens. And I opened up the table. He rolled D100. He got. Let me just see if I can read this. I'm gonna need my glasses here. Hold for a second. He got 90. Wait. Oh crap! I know I made a note of it. 47. And the 47 is a unicorn controlled by the DM appears in a space within 5 feet of you, then disappears 1 minute later. So basically, they were out walking around the town, and he rolls, and this damn unicorn shows up. What does my player do? Stabs it in the neck. I'm like, you vengeful bastard! Why? Anyway, so of course, then it was made it easy to get rid of the unicorn because it just took off and then disappeared whatever time later. But unbelievable that unicorns. I'm a fan of the Glenn Cook version of the unicorn where they're evil bastards. They don't care about anybody. It's their own self-interest. Can't unicorns.
When I was young, I played in a game that haunts me today, and I keep referencing it. We go into this dungeon and we pick the lock on this door and we enter the room and there's a unicorn in there because the guys just randomly do. I'm like, why the fuck was there a unicorn in an enclosed space? It's probably been there 3,000 years. It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
A skeletal unicorn. So it's a unicorn zombie?
Perfectly alive. It's like, how did it survive in a small room? It doesn't make any sense.
Random tables.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is why I love them. And some of the I've got to reference another fantastic random table, and it's actually available as a free PDF to anybody who wants to search for it. Is the Metamorphica, and it is a table of mutations, and it's really helped my game this that I'm writing right now in terms of writing random events and NPCs that the characters are going to encounter, because one of the things that's happened is there's random mutations going on in the world and as a result of nanites. But yeah, the Metamorphica itself is fantastic. It's a D1000 table. Obviously, the higher you roll up on the 900s and 800s, you get very crazy superhero-esque powers. But the very bottom of the table is a lot of physical transformations. So we had someone roll random face, which was their whole facial structure was rearranged. So their eyes were down here, and their nose was over here, and it made for, then you're stuck with a PC that's got to carry on these attributes for the rest of the duration. And that made for some interesting things. But yeah, I can't say enough for this table. If you get a chance to use it, you need a random mutation, or you want to start writing mutations into your adventures. This is the place to go. Metamorphica. There's several versions of the PDF online, but yeah, you can find it no problem.
Cool.
Alrighty. Well, it's been a while, so we will now begin the slow decline, the rapid decline into ending the stream. Thank you.
Is there chat? I'm sorry, I didn't even notice if there was chat.
No,
oh my God. I forget about this live stream chat thing that you said pay attention to and pay homage to.
Well, the first like 15 minutes to half an hour of the stream, we forgot to make it public.
We forgot to make it live.
Oh.
So we apologize for that.
That's why we had to recap, because we were like, we didn't make it live.
Okay,
This is
so
what we
I don't
figured out
feel
so
so
far.
bad for missing out on the front.
No, it wasn't your
You
fault.
were
Yeah,
actually
it was
in quite early.
yeah, actually, yeah, you were.
So thank you for
So-
everyone who has actually joined us. Thank you, Bung Wires, for joining us in the video chat. This is obviously to promote our Kickstarter on which ends at the end of this month. Thank you to everyone who
10
has
days. 10 days.
10 days. Everyone who has backed us. We're 55% of the last time I checked. Well, let me just recheck again quickly because it has been accelerating. Seeing as we've had some videos released, we've gone up already in the live chat by about $150. So thank you to everyone who has been backing us and the people who are following us. We know there's about 200 of you that haven't pulled the trigger yet. Hopefully you'll realize there are only 10 days left to pull the trigger. So thank you for helping make this a reality. No matter what happens, just people throwing their support behind us means a lot. So we thank you muchly.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that, we'll then click the button that stops.